Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts for a quick, rapid, short, brief, instant reaction to...
Shorter than that description of how short it is.
Yes, exactly. Brevity is the soul of wit. We are here to react to the Packers' first round pick, or the first round of the NFL draft overall. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. He already, butted in as he does. But Dad, how are you doing? He is down here. We are in person, so apologies for any audio quality differences than usual. But we're going to be reacting to the first round of the draft, and specifically the Packers selecting Matthew Golden. Dad, I kind of, jumped on your moment there for a second, but how are you doing?
Doing good. Drove down today. Got here in time for the draft. So very excited. Excellent first round of the draft so far.
Yes. Like we already mentioned, Packers select Matthew Golden. We'll be doing a full deep dive into Golden, but we figure we might as well get our instant reactions out there for this week because, what better time than the draft to have, a quick instant reaction show. Packers select wide receiver Matthew Golden at 23 overall, wide receiver out of Texas. Third wide receiver off the board. Fourth, if you include Travis Hunter, who was selected in a surprise trade-up by the Jacksonville Jaguars up to 2, which was kind of wild. It was a great day for the draft. It looked like an awesome time in Green Bay. Shout out to Mark Murphy. Shout out to all that Green Bay staff for bringing it to Green Bay and doing such a good job with it. It looked like everyone had a great job, or everyone had a great time, rather. It also, I think I saw at one point that they had reached capacity. So very popular. A lot of people in town. Went great. But Dad, let's talk a little bit about this pick. We're just giving our quick reactions. Like I mentioned, we'll be doing a deep dive later, so check that out next week. We'll be doing a deep dive for all the Packers picks, so stay tuned to those. And also, if you like what you heard, like, subscribe, the drill, leave a comment, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer, et cetera, et cetera. But Dad, Matthew Golden, when the pick was made, how did you feel?
I was very excited, so we were like counting down how many players are left that we want as our pick is approaching. Okay, we got three players and 2 picks, 4 players and 8 picks, 4 players and 5 picks, 3 players and 2 picks.
It's like one of the guys we want is going to be there. Will they pick him? Probably not.
One or possibly 2 or 3 of the players we want will be there. Will they actually end up picking? And so by the time it came to the Packers pick, my feeling was Golden was my favorite. The guys who were left by the time they came to their pick.
After Harmon went off the board at 21 to the Steelers, Golden was the guy that I was probably highest on of the remaining players. He was my wide receiver 1 outside of Travis Hunter. I had it as Golden, then McMillan, then Egbuka, and then Ayamenar 4th, actually. But we'll talk about that later. But he was my wide receiver 1 out of that, besides the Hunter group, because he's kind of his own unicorn thing. I am very excited. I think he has the ceiling to be like a number 1 option in an offense. Obviously has the speed, ran like a 4.29, I believe it was. Doesn't always play like quite that fast, but he is undoubtedly very fast and just amazing route runner. He's so smooth. He's so quick in and out of his breaks. Hands like vice grips. Like, he's kind of a smaller guy, but he plays much bigger because his hands are so good. And I'm very happy about the pick. I think it's going to be electric. And the intro to him, shout out to Mark Murphy for playing up the moment, huh? He did a fantastic job.
He was loving it. We're watching, and I'm thinking, okay, for the first time since 2002, it's like, they've done it. They're picking Golden.
Well, at first you were like, they're picking Golden. I was like, wait, they could pick another wide receiver. They're picking a wide receiver, but we don't know which one.
I jumped to the most optimistic interpretation immediately.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we were both really ecstatic. I was doing some fist pumps. But just some, things about Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. He's going to turn 22 by the start of the season. He's mostly been an outside receiver, 76% of those outside, and 80% of his career per PFF were his snaps outside, while at Houston for 2 years and then Texas for 1 year. This past year for Texas was a season where, he started off the year as kind of like their wide receiver 2, but then by the college football playoff, he was like their wide receiver 1 with a bullet, their go-to weapon whenever they needed a big completion, big play down the stretch. It was going to him on like a 4th and 13, I think it was, against Arizona State in borderline overtime, I believe it was. Going to him time and time again. I mean, he was their go-to guy. The production is maybe not exactly what you'd expect from, a first-round pick overall, given that he didn't really turn it on until the second half of the season for Texas. But, I mean, just watch him play. He's a fantastic receiver in terms of his smoothness in and out of breaks, his explosiveness, his catching ability. I'm really excited about this, the prospects of what he could be for Green Bay.
Yeah, and you talk about turning it on in the college, like the last 3 games of the year, which is like the conference championship and the college playoffs, hit 362 yards over the last 3 games. it may have taken him part of the year to like take over the number one job, but then he was stellar and like scoring the touchdowns, in overtime in the playoff, scoring the 2-point conversion when they absolutely had to have it. He was making the plays, and they were, calling his number when it was important for a play to be made. So I was very excited. He looks very smooth. I think one thing I've got in here in my notes, like when I first started watching him, I wasn't sold on him, but when I went to look at the tapes, like, okay, he's better than I expected. Watching him play the game and catch the ball and the way he moves with the ball.
And honestly, like, I almost feel like he is done a bit. This is going to sound dumb, but that him running a 4.29, I think, has made the conversation not enough about how good of a receiver he is. Because every time he's brought up, everyone's like, oh, wow, like blazing speed, 4.29. And so I think a lot of times people immediately think like, oh, like, so like a John Ross type where it's like, oh, he's like just a burner. I think that he is just so much more of a complete receiver than like the conversation generally ends up being about around him. Because a lot of times you see that 40, it's the only thing people talk about. It's like, oh, that 4.29, like that 4.29. It's like, and so it kind of overshadows in some ways just how complete of a receiver he is, like in terms of his route running and his catching ability, et cetera, his understanding of how to break down corners. Over the course of his career, I mean, here's some quotes that were from broadcast just to, kind of throw out what some people thought about those. Mina Kimes, when the pick was made, called it her favorite pick of the draft at that point, like through 23 picks. Quote, it was a home run. Todd McShay of The Ringer said, quote, Golden is the only guy in this class that moves like this. I saw some of the things, not all, but some of the things that make Tyreek Hill special, end quote. And obviously, a guy that Green Bay was clearly very high on. We have some quotes from that as well. But Dad, you had a couple things about some of his production as well while he was at Texas. Like we mentioned, we'll be doing a full deep dive into all of the production metrics, dominator rating, what he did at Houston, what he did at Texas, how he did compared to other Texas receivers, what his athletic profile looks like, what his athletic profile would look like if he had maybe done a couple more testing metrics, because mostly he just ran the 40. He didn't do the jumps, didn't do the agilities. But Dad, you want to talk a little bit about some of his production while he was at Texas?
So not in like going deep into the analytics, but he had almost 1,000 yards, 987 yards this year, 9 touchdowns, as well as really and a 69.9, it's basically 70% catch percentage. So that's something I've always thought is really important for receivers, to figure out who's going to potentially be productive on the next level. So I think all of that looks really, especially the fact that they really turned it on to him. They turned over their offense to him as their number one guy partway through the year. And then he really started producing. One thing I felt like in going into the draft, the consensus opinion is that the Packers needed a go-to guy, but they also need to take the top off guy. And Golden seems to do both.
Certainly has the ability to do both, I think, like as a ceiling. And also forgot to mention just some, metrics about, we mentioned his physical profile. He didn't do the jumps, didn't do the agilities, measured in at 5'11", 191. And like we mentioned, ran the 40-yard dash in 4.29. So, other than that, he didn't test. We'll talk a little bit about that in the deep dive and what we think he maybe would have jumped if he had, based on some other players who had similar athletic measurables. But obviously, it was an awesome moment for him. He was at the draft in Green Bay. He got on the big microphone in front of the whole crowd of however many thousands, tens of thousands. It was like, shouting about how, he's so excited to be here, excited to, got everyone to do a Green Bay chant, excited to, be home, I think was one of the words he said. And one other thing was the quote from afterwards when some Packers beat reporters were interviewing him was, quote, I've never felt anything like it. I wish I could go back out there right now. The energy the Packers fans got, end quote, which is obviously, you love to hear it. It's, a little bit of fan service, but we love fan service. It's good to get.
And he was enjoying being with the fans when he grabbed the mic and started like yelling out to the fans and getting so he was enjoying the moment, which was nice to see him like really excited, fans really excited for him.
Yeah. And just, I think very excited. The gold jacket was sick. I was a big fan of the jacket he had
on. Really picked up some of the green lights too, so it gave that green and gold look to it, and the big G.
Oh, you saw everyone on Twitter and Blue Sky posting out like green and golden, which was like right there. Obviously, it was perfect. He had the big G pendant, which was like obviously for Golden, but hey, it can be for Green Bay now too. Exactly. Some quotes from Brian Gutekunst though after the after the draft, or after the first round rather. from, a brief presser that he had. They asked about it. He made a hilarious joke about, he's like, yeah, no, actually, that wasn't the name we sent in. Mark just announced it. Because Mark Murphy, he played it perfectly in terms of like for the first time since 2002. But it was great. Obviously, shout out to Mark Murphy.
He was definitely enjoying the moments, like
as he should.
He was like very, very happy to be up there. It's like, okay, this is it. It's going great. Like a big giant street party in the middle of Green Bay.
Any other year, I would be like, Mark, get on with it. You are milking this. This is going on forever. But this is his moment. This was his baby, and he made this happen for Green Bay. So, take as much time as you need, Mark Murphy. But some quotes from Brian Gutekunst. Quote, obviously, he has elite speed. His ability to stretch the field outside the numbers is really, really important. And when you watch him, we thought he arguably had some of the best hands in the draft, end quote. Matt Schneidman put that on Twitter. Gutekunst also was asked about what stood out about Matthew Golden during his pre-draft visit. And the quote was, quote, authentic and genuine, end quote. And that was from Wes Hodkiewicz. They talked a little bit to him about, traditionally the Packers have liked taller receivers, have liked bigger receivers. And they asked him about that, what they said Mendoza line would be. This was from Jason B. Hirschhorn. Quote, it would probably be right at that 5'11" mark. But I will say there are guys that have played out there that have been under that height, but they usually have to have some sort of special trait. Speed is one of them, end quote. And so those are kind of some thoughts Brian Gutekunst had about the pick. Dad, any thoughts on those thoughts?
Well, just so if you talk about the size, for the players who have played under Gutekunst as GM, he would be tied for the second lightest with Cobb, Toure, and Jaden Reed. And he's just a little bit taller than, same height as Melton, a little taller than Reed and Cobb and Amari Rodgers. And then he might be the fastest 40 of any Green Bay Packer ever.
The only one I can think of
That's
the ones that he's drafted. The only one I can think of the ones that were drafted is Stokes. He's the only other 4.2 guy.
You're right. Stokes might be a little bit faster, actually.
Yeah, I think Stokes ran.
Was he like a 4.25 or something crazy like that?
He was in the mid 4.2s. I'm pretty sure he was like a tick faster, but at that point, it's almost like
right. So the
error measurement.
The fastest wide receiver.
Yes,
but Stokes was. Oh no, the official time is not quite so high not quite so fast for Stokes.
Yeah, for some reason I thought I remembered Stokes running an even faster 40 than a 4.2, but no, yeah, he was down at a 4.31. So this might be the fastest, timed Packer that we've had under Brian Gutekunst, which is exciting. Matthew McConaughey also tweeted out about it. Quote, route hand speed at Packers, at Matthew Golden, at Texas Longhorns. Obviously, he's a Longhorn super fan. So that's kind of, are we going to get Matthew McConaughey as our new celebrity, celebrity fan?
Show up and maybe sit next to Tony Shalhoub.
He's going to be, yeah, right. With Carrie Elwes also.
Can we start some all right chants?
Yeah,
out there in the stands.
So that's always fun. But a little bit more about Golden, they also asked him, which I thought was a nice, what's the word? Personal interest story. They were asking about, apparently his grandmother lost her house recently. And he's going to buy it back for her and his cousins, which is obviously a really awesome story. And that's super exciting for him. It's always great when it's the guys from the green room too. You get to see them do the walk and you get to see them experience that moment.
He was so excited. He was so excited coming down that hall. You saw the replay of it and look at him like, oh yeah, he is just bouncing and running down that hall.
Yeah. And I'm very excited to watch him in this offense with Jordan Love. We really saw in that Eagles game, they just didn't have a guy who could beat man coverage, as a pure route runner, and a guy who could take the top off. And Golden has the ability to give this offense both of those things, like you mentioned earlier. And I think, with his, because the thing is, he is smaller, but his catch radius, because of his hands, is quite large. And I might have already mentioned this, but I said it previously when, I was talking to you earlier. It's funny that it came full circle that, the first mock draft we did this draft season, was Matthew Golden first round, or mine at least. I was going to let you ride my
first. You mean our public one?
Yeah, I was going to let you ride my coattails there, but
sure.
Then I wanted to take him with
credit. I must have contributed to you picking that, even though I picked somebody else.
And even at the time, I was like, he's a little small for them. I don't know if they're going to go for it, but he does play a lot bigger. Like I mentioned before, though, I was going to say before I interrupted myself, it was that he really does remind me of Terry McLaurin in a lot of ways, where the time speed is fantastic, but he doesn't quite play to the time speed, but plays way bigger than his size. In like fantastic route runner, super smooth, really good in and out of breaks.
I guess even though he did do agility, his agility looks good on.
I don't know why he didn't, but on the field. Yeah, exactly. But so I'm really excited about that. But Dad, anything else you wanted to add on Golden before we talk a little bit about the draft in general?
Yeah, in terms of not doing the agility, it's like we were talking earlier, it's like 4.29. I'm done. I'm not. I don't need to do anything else today.
It's the Dion where it's just like, yeah, I'm going home now because I ran a 4.29. Like, fair enough, A couple other things. I guess that was actually all we had on Golden for this. Just quick, brief takeaway. It's going to be exciting to see how that receiver room shakes out. I think we're going to probably see a lot of 11 personnel, I would imagine, this season, with just a lot of, I'm going to guess Golden and Dobbs on the outside with Reed in the slot. We'll see how they work in Luke Musgrave. We'll see how they work in Wicks. They'd had a heavy rotation last year. They're probably still going to have that again this year. We'll see how they work. Christian Watson back as well. But we're going to have time to talk about all that in the deep dive episode. Dad, let's talk a little bit just briefly about the first round overall, since we're, we got some time. We're doing our just overall kind of quick reactions. Anything that, stood out to you out of that first round? It was pretty chalky for the most part.
For the most part, which players got picked was pretty chalky. I mean, I was... came into today thinking, we know the first 4 picks. We know what everybody's doing. And then suddenly, like a couple hours before the draft, all of a sudden the Browns are looking to trade out. It's like, wait, what? No, that's not right.
That was crazy how quickly that moved. How fast they moved with that.
Yeah, so
And I mean, we did know the first 4. We did know the first 4 picks. We just didn't know who necessarily.
Right. So the Jags said, we need another receiver. And we need to fix our defense.
I thought it was really funny how, like, with the Jags moving up, like, because it was months and months and months of Mason Graham's the pick at 5, Mason Graham's the pick at 5. And then within the last week, suddenly it's Ashton Genty's the pick at 5. Like, he's rocketing up the betting odds. Like, he's by far the favorite to go 5. And then when the Jags trade up to 2, the Browns move down to 5 and pick Mason Graham. It's like, oh, it all just came back full circle. Like, it's just Graham again. And then Genty ends up with the Raiders, where he was favored to go for months. And then suddenly in the last 2 weeks, it was like, actually, we're not going to take Genty. Like, we're going to go with an offensive lineman. And it all just kind of, shook out from there. Any big surprises in the draft, though, for you in the first round?
The other surprise in terms of what happened was the Atlanta trading back into the first round again.
Giving up an extra first round pick was definitely a little bit surprising there.
Because I was kind of expecting somebody like the Browns or the Giants or the Saints, somebody who needed a quarterback, to trade back up into the end of the first round. Like, Atlanta, okay, so we traded up. It's like, oh, wait a minute. No, they're not. They just got the quarterback last year, but they're moving up now.
Yeah, and just like that was surprising that they gave up an extra first to go back up. I mean, obviously, I think they got 2 pretty good players, given the fact that they ended up with Jalen Walker and then also ended up with James Pierce Jr. So they get some pass rushers. They've needed pass rushers for the better part of a decade. Yeah. But it did feel like a really steep price to pay to go up for Pierce, especially looking at the fact that, Green and Ezeraku are both still, we'll talk a little bit in a second about some players that we're keeping our eye on for tomorrow, but that they're both still on the board. One other thing that kind of surprised me, 2 tight ends in the top 15, maybe not surprising, but I think a draft, like, I can't remember the last time 2 tight ends went that high.
It's been a long time since I heard. I'm sorry, podcast. I listened to 8 hours of podcast while I was driving today.
Yeah.
At 1.8x.
It all just,
so now I don't remember who said what anymore. But somebody did say there's going to be a long time since there are 2 tight ends that high.
Yeah, but so that, and they were expected to go high, but definitely just something interesting note. Tyler Booker ending up going 13 to Dallas, or 12 to Dallas rather. Sorry. Maybe a bit surprising. He was a guy that maybe was going to go in the 20s, but there were obviously a lot of fans of his in the league, and he was a very good player at Alabama despite not testing well, and has a high character. He's a high character guy as well, so that's maybe not surprising. Ted McMillan going to 8 to the Panthers was a little surprising. What did you think about that?
I was not expecting him to go that high. I was like, oh, I guess he's not following the Packers now. Not even anywhere close to getting traded for.
And when he went 8, I was honestly like, okay, none of the receivers are making it to us.
I thought there could be a run.
I was like, there's no way Golden's making it to us now.
Like,
Igbokwe maybe makes it to us, but he ended up going higher. So
yeah, so once he went like 6 to 10 picks higher than I expected, I thought, okay, yeah, we're going to be like a run on wide receivers now, like it's happened to us before.
Yeah, I was guaranteeing. I was like, okay, so like if he goes there, I was like, then Golden's going to go to the Cowboys, and then Igbokwe's going to go like 2 picks before us. Da 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 da. When I was like, okay, so not wide receivers. I started pretty much pivoting to edges and D tackles.
We were both certain that with McMillan gone, that the Cowboys were going to go Golden.
Yeah, Texas, like that definitely felt like, something that Jerry would be primed to do. Other things, Shedeur Sanders falls out of the first round. I don't think that's necessarily surprising, but it was definitely the talk of the night. Jackson Dart, meanwhile, going at 25.
The Giants now have 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, they said they're still going to start Russell Wilson. I don't know, like, if you're Jameis Winston,
you got to think,
what are you thinking?
Right, I probably started thinking that as soon as they signed Russ. Like, okay, I signed here, and now you're piling up.
And the 2 guys are ahead of me.
2 guys ahead of me.
I'm the 3rd stringer.
Is he like, I should be asking for a trade already?
I mean, honestly, if I'm the Giants, I'm like, you know what? This is a good trade chip, like for later. Like at some point, a team's going to need a backup quarterback, and we have one of the better ones. Like, yeah,
hello, New Orleans.
Yeah, honestly, and the Steelers not taking a quarterback, that kind of opens the door back up for Aaron Rodgers. Although Shedeur's still on the board, but they don't have a 2nd rounder, so it'd be kind of hard for them.
They'd have to like trade a next
lot
year pick to get to him.
So that's interesting. Beyond that, anything else really stand out to you from this group of draft picks?
Well, there was the funny Eagles traded up 1 spot to get Jahan Campbell, and as you said, it had to be that the Chiefs told him, "Hey,
yeah,
somebody else wants Campbell is going to trade with us if you don't give us something."
Quick aside: if you're the Eagles, and the Chiefs call you that, do you believe that?
I guess did the Chiefs just make this up?
And there was
to squeeze a 5th rounder out.
And to just kind of circle this back to the Packers, like there were reports that the Eagles had actually been trying to trade up at 22, at 23, and at 24. So at 23, the Packers. So the Packers had the opportunity to move back, but were just so high on Golden that they picked Golden, which I think is just another testament to how high on him they are, and his ceiling and his their thoughts on him as a prospect, and his ability to possibly be the number 1 in this offense, which I guess we'll see as the rest of the draft and the rest of the offseason goes. But yeah, I think just wrapping up what happened today in the draft, the rest of it wasn't too surprising. 2 running backs, which we kind of expected. A lot of offensive line, a lot of defensive line. No, not Denver. They end up going Jahdae Barron, which was maybe a bit of a surprise. We kind of expected that, but the Chargers going running back, I don't think anyone's necessarily super surprised with Greg Roman.
I think we called it coming up to the Chargers. Like, you know what?
They could take a running back.
Because they didn't re-sign Dobbins, and they might want to add a running back.
Yeah, but a bunch of linemen, a bunch of defensive linemen, kind of expected. But Dad, let's pivot to talking about tomorrow, or I guess today, when everyone is listening to this, as you listen to this brief instant reaction.
Yes, it's today our time if we drag this out for another hour.
I know, right? And it's definitely today wherever you're listening to this. Best players available, though, going into day 2 that you like for Green Bay. A lot of players that were maybe projected to go in the first round didn't end up. That's just kind of how it goes every single year. But who are you keeping your eye on as players who are available for Green Bay that you might want them to take a look at in day 2?
Yeah, so I was thinking about pass rushers, and especially what we felt like is the next most important thing we needed to add here. And so for me, and we overlap a little bit here. I have Ezraku and Michael Green, and then what as edge rushers. And there are a couple others as well. There are more edge rushers left going into the 2nd round in the 2nd day than I was expecting. And then another one is a D tackle that has some pass rush juice is Darius Alexander out of Toledo.
Yeah, I think pass rush should definitely still be on their radar in terms of what they need to add as the skill set to this team right now. Obviously, that means Ezraku. Obviously, that means Green. Obviously, I like Alexander there as well. Braden Swinson's a guy that I would be keeping my eye on if they stay in pick at 54. They have picks 54 and 87. So they have those 2 picks coming up tomorrow unless they add more or move back or move around, but we'll be keeping you updated on that. Swinson's a guy. Landon Jackson's a guy I would imagine they would like. I'm not as high on him, but I would imagine they would like him. JT Tuimoloau.
I like him more in the 2nd than the 1st.
Yeah, JT Tuimoloau is also a guy I think that they would like as well. Athletic edge rusher out of Ohio State. Would imagine that they're just going to keep there are a lot of players still available. Like Darian Porter's still available. Princely Umanmielen is still available. Darian Porter's a corner, but Princely Umanmielen edge rusher is available. Savon Revel's available. We'll see what and how much he ends up falling with those injury concerns that he had, coming in. Will Johnson's still available, a guy a lot of people thought coming into the pre-draft process was going to be a top 15, top 10 guy. And he didn't end up going in the first round because of concerns about a foot, a knee, and overall speed. So, he's kind of unfortunately got the trifecta going there. But so we'll keep an eye out for there. Nick Emenwari was a guy that maybe the Packers could be interested in just because they like athletic freaks. I don't know where they would play him, but right. He's out there. But yeah, so, and I guess just, do you see anyone you would want the Packers to move up for on day 2?
I guess if there was going to move up for any one player, for me, or Ezeraku probably, or Green. Yeah. One of those two guys would be the only players I would move up for them. They might move back.
Yeah, they might. But if they came out of this draft with Matthew Golden and Donovan Ezeraku, pants all the way off, I'm running naked down the street.
All right. I'll be inside here watching the dog.
Yeah, bail me out of jail later. But that would be a dream scenario, I think, for Green Bay. You're able to, tackle your playmaker needs in some ways. You're able to tackle your pass rush needs as well with a guy who a lot of people thought might go in the first round. Either way, whether it's Ezeraku or Green, I'm still also very high on Swinson. I thought he would be more of a borderline first rounder, but it's looking like he's not going to end up being, or what am I saying? He did not end up going in the first round.
It definitely looks like he's not.
It definitely looks like it. But Jordan Birch, there's a bunch of pass rushers still available. And so if they can, regardless of who it is, address, they already addressed their pass catcher need and playmaker need on day 1. If they can then attack, pass rush on day 2, and maybe, as day 3 comes along, get maybe some corner depth, some offensive line depth, some interior defensive line depth. I think that's a dream scenario for the Packers.
Yeah, I expect them to look for some pass rush juice on day 2 and maybe either offensive lineman or corner, depending on who's like better of what's available at those positions. And then they could add depth, I think, in day 3. Maybe some like a nose tackle, some more D line depth, particularly a big nose tackle, run stuffer, as well as some more, corner depth, offensive line depth, like they always do.
Yeah.
Just going to keep hammering these positions every year to, see what sticks.
Yeah. And we'll be keeping you all up to date on all of that as that comes and rolls around tomorrow. But this was just a quick instant reaction. Like we already mentioned, we will be doing a deep dive on Matthew Golden in the coming weeks, next week specifically. We'll be doing a deep dive into him. We'll be doing a deep dive into all the other players the Packers draft. So we'll be doing a series of those, probably like 1 to 2 prospects every single episode. So probably take us about 4 or 5 weeks, but keep your eyes tuned to that. This has just been our instant reaction to the Packers drafting Matthew Golden to the first round overall. But we'll keep you updated on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer with, whatever picks the Packers make, whatever moves the Packers make, news coming out of Green Bay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you like what you hear, keep it tuned to here. We'll be doing an episode every single week for the rest of the offseason, talking about the prospects they took, talking about OTAs, minicamp, training camp, et cetera, et cetera. Follow us on, Blue Sky, like we mentioned. Subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like us to, improve, change. Let us know if you just have any positive feedback. We'll take that too.
Any questions?
Any questions? If you want us to expand on something. We just love talking football with our big Packers community, and it was great to see all those Packers fans out there in Green Bay today, and just to remind us that, Packers fans, best fans in the world. But Dad, I think that'll do it for us. This was just a quick brief one. We'll be doing a deep dive next week. So until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.